MSI and Intel has basically taken my premium PC of like a whole 18 months old and put it into the same space as like my water cooler operates. And it's a whole functioning laptop. I'm very uncomfortable with this. Good afternoon, morning, and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. GS66 Stealth is our review sample this last week, and boy, what a week it has been of basically me just crying in Spanish at how nice this laptop is and that my premium PC is no longer premium anymore because this thing is kind of almost shamefully beaten it at almost every single punch, at least the ones that matter to a gamer, right? And then some more, because yeah, this is a literal server in your pocket. So primarily, this is a laptop, last I checked, and the primary function of a laptop is to have power and mobility, which is exactly what's been accomplished here, just in spades. The 12th generation stuff with these P cores and E cores is really just continuing to be quite ridiculous. So in this instance, we have a GS66 Stealth, which has a really, really nice suite of media functions and packages, including one of the biggest touchpads I've ever seen, literally. Fingerprint reader on the top left of that. The touchpad is multi-touch as well. You can two-finger scroll, etc. Does work quite nicely, especially after you give it a little bit of a wipe and there's not like someone else's icky residue. I'm looking at you, MSI Marketing. James, looking at you. Last time this happens. Next to that, you'll find it flanked by some DIN audio speakers that are so loud, they might as well have just been a home theater system in of itself. The stereo split on it is actually ridiculously good. The overall audio quality, you're not going to get much bass out of the thing, but for like playing back some games and watching some movies and stuff on the move without another solution, they're significantly better than normal laptop speakers. I mean, significantly better, ear-shatteringly better, without any distortion. They were massively uncomfortable at the max volume, which is sort of ridiculous, okay? But that's kind of the idea of the GS66 Stealth. They're trying to do this multimedia slash gaming slash office PC all in one package. And it is actually working quite nicely. The port setup on this laptop is not like other premium laptops where they're trying to get it through the back. To get this ultra blade sort of ultra slim chassis, they've put in the obviously on the left hand and on the right hand side. So on the left hand side, you get a USB type A, your HDMI, and your first display Thunderbolt duty over here. And it is marked, as far as I remember, with a little Chica lightning bolt. Yeah, there's a little Chica lightning bolt over there on the side. And then obviously the power connector and then some vents towards the back of the laptop over here for all of that cooling that they've put inside of it. And then on the left hand side, you get another type A, two more Thunderbolt types with a display port on those. Those being, so they've got display on the one side and then on the side, which is interesting. Headphone jack, it's a combi jack as well. I believe it is a 3-in-1. And then next to that is the RJ45. Keyboard, Steel Series, full Steel Series engine support, per key backlighting, macros, you name it, all the good Steel Series software stuff, and one button access, so you hit function. There is a dedicated Steel Series key on the top of the keyboard in order to do that. Speaking of dedicated keys on the keyboard, there's ones for the on-screen crosshair, which is quite cool. There's for the gaming mode, which is also obviously cool and nice to have, and that also will launch your MSI center. And then there's one that you can enable and disable cooler boost without having to alt tab. Best key literally put onto a laptop maybe ever is just having that. Let me give you a live demonstration of this. So you're just chilling, you're playing some games or some movies and stuff, but now you maybe want to render out a piece of soft, like something from Adobe or something from 3D, and you're gonna have to lean on your processor. Except that it's not gonna give you the full speed without the cooler boost. The cooler boost literally does make a performance difference, which I'll show you later. But if I want to enable that, I need to go into the software bro. One button, literally. I've got the function key lock on, so it's here on escape. One button. Cooler boost enabled. And you can feel it. It even comes out of the side of the notebook. And if you don't want it to be loud anymore, one button. One button now, and you can change your profile of your machine. Great job, MSI. Fantastic work. Moving further up the laptop though, you'll notice this here monitor. This has to be the best laptop monitor I've ever used, ever. Literally. In my entire life, I've never used a laptop monitor nearly as good as this. It's an IPS, it's super low response time. I can see it's a true 1 millisecond. There's absolutely no smearing. It's 240 Hertz. QHD, 1440p, 240 Hertz. So in something like CS, where this machine gets quite a comfy 300 plus FPS on average, okay, because it's a giga chat of a processor and GPU combo, where it gets that, this one is just absolutely fantastic. But not every game is going to run at that, especially in new AAA titles. Like Forza, for instance, where I got 60, 70 FPS, it felt better on this than it did on my Alienware 240. Also, because of that pixel density, because this is 1440p on 15.6, it's extremely sharp. I can't like, those of you that use 4K and stuff on phones and stuff and have been in the 200 plus PPI areas and seen this firsthand will know. I've just done the G15 recently, and that was quite dim. This thing pumps like 350 nit. It's really good. The brightness is solid. Even under my big lights, I can have both of them on and I can still see everything on the screen. Absolutely no problems. Once again, one button change, one button to take the brightness up or down. I really like that there's a function key lock. I really like that there is that there. One of the nicer touches to have on a notebook, because how many times do you go for your F key versus how many times do you go for your volume key? Think about it like that. The back of the laptop and the chassis and the frame, all aluminium, only the best. The whole thing is like 20 mils thick. I'll put the exact size on the screen, but it's one of these ultra slim 20 mil sort of thick notebooks, which is disgusting. When you're looking at that component set, 32 gig RAM at 4800 megahertz. I'll put the exact timings on the screen, but it's cast latency of 40, which is pretty good for notebooks. Notebooks usually, for instance, on 3200, you'll see generally CL22, but you'll see CL16 on desktop. So these are much closer to their desktop compatriots, even with a little SODIMM, which is quite impressive. The NVMe is so fast. The small file handling, I looked at the test afterwards, I was like, I'm going to leave that on the screen there. That's like double any other NVMe I've tested. Most NVMe's with big file sizes, what you're seeing at the top there, so that's what their quoted maximum will be, like 7,000 and 5,000, and it'll get within reach of that, about 10% or so, which is exactly how far we are off over here, about 10 and 5%. So very close to those maximums, but that's not the real story, because that's just for loading up big file sizes, movies and other things like that, some gaming files and that sort of stuff. Quick burp interlude, I do apologize. But for the small file sizes, that's where the real story is. That's where you, like, a great example of this is like pretty much everything that's been made on Source Engine since Half-Life 2, okay? They all use tiny little resource files, which makes the game run quite efficiently instead of it loading up a whole bunch of, big texture files and only picking and choosing from within those texture files. It really only loads up the ones that it needs at the time, which makes a difference there. But when you transfer the game, those writing stop and start cycles take forever, because the drive and the CPU has to do CRC, a cyclic redundancy check, in that process, and that's what slows it down so much. This is not slowing down, okay? 906.73. That's faster with small files than any 2.5 inch SSD in existence, okay? That's how far the technology's come. It's sick to behold and to see it. But now, as we're getting into performance, I must obviously speak about the core components in the system, which are the CPU and the GPU. So the CPU, with its 6 P cores and 8 E cores, is a 14 core 20 thread. If my math is being done correctly, no, it's 22 thread or 24 thread. It's a 24, 6 plus 16, it's 22.
2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1, that's 3, quick maths.
I'll put the exact specifications, it's actually a little bit like confusing. I'm trying to do quick math, but I know that it's 14 cores, it's 6P cores and 8E cores. That's the setup of the 12700H. And the result of that is significant amounts of processing power. I mean, you're talking like, let me just flash you Cinebench R23, just as an example. The scaling is not as good. I would expect that with the P cores not having hyperthreading. But even with that considered, the multi-threaded is still better than the first gen Threadripper. That's right. This laptop with its 240 watt power brick now beats a 200 watt CPU from like 3-4 years ago. The progression at the moment is kind of frightening. It will only achieve those results with Cooler Boost, the ones that you are seeing there. If you don't put on Cooler Boost, I'll show you with some Firestrike results, some live results that I filmed of this notebook. You can see that it is going to give you a 10% performance bump. But the noise difference between those two, you're talking about like 10 decibels. Actually, maybe a little bit more than that. I would see it reaching the low 50s without that on the sound meter, and more like towards the low to mid 60s if you do a Cooler Boost enabled. I mean, you can hear it even as I just push the key, even as I do the demonstration. It is quite a loud boy, and it's going to be about the same volume as I'm speaking to you now. It's quite loud. It is quite loud, which obviously you don't want to use all the time, but it is there if you want to render and you want to keep the longevity of your parts, then that is an option. The auto fan with the turbo mode in the MSI center was really the best of both worlds. It gave me the best overall experience and quite comfortably produced more than 70 FPS on 2K. So as you can see with the Firestrike results, my 5900X is faster than the 12700H in here, except with almost twice the TDP. Okay, this does get to 105 watt, that goes to 130, but that's water cooled with a push-pull setup with a 280mm radiator. It's completely different league to what we're dealing with here. And the single core performance from this is better. So it actually is better for games than my desktop. And that becomes very obvious, especially when you look at resolution scaling. This is a 3070 Ti laptop edition. Okay, the reason that I do this is because wattage once again is halved compared to its desktop counterpart, so that it can fit in here and actually be cooled in as slim a chassis as it is sitting. But if you look at 1440p performance, it will thump my 2070 Super. It's not even a competition. And this is a gimped 3070 Ti in a notebook. It's kind of disgusting. Now, I think I've painted a good picture here of the performance and what you can expect from the notebook. But what I haven't really sort of discussed is the lifestyle portion of that. So let's go through that. First thing is, I managed to break the keyboard LED and it wouldn't respond. Turns out it was just the brightness setting, and that's hardware level, it's not software level. So I went through resetting the machine multiple times thinking I'd broken something in the software. Turns out I was literally just, I needed to hit the button over here on the keyboard, which is for the brightness of the backlight. Okay, the backlight itself is fantastic. It is super uber duper bright. You do not need to be in a dark space to know that it is working. It will shine, literally shine up off the keyboard and like be reflective on the palm of my hand and stuff. It's bright. It's very, very bright. The touchpad is fantastic. Having the extra space and stuff is really nice, especially going from side to side across your screen. Up and down, you don't really do as much, so they've kind of made it in the shape for the widescreen. You can see where the idea was with that. It's quite clever. The cooling performance and stuff is really good. The machine, I played Forza for 2 hours solid. It did not skip a beat. This was after benchmarking constantly throughout that day. It had, I would say, basically 6.5 hours worth of hardcore usage, and it was just kept trotting on. The battery life as well is sick because it's got a 99.9 watt hour battery. At full performance load, etc., it'll last about 2.5 hours. So if you want to do full gaming without any, stepping back on wattage, etc., it will last 2.5 hours. But if you put it in the performance like efficiency mode and you're looking at like just video playback, and this is bearing in mind, all of this is with the discrete GPU enabled, hard enabled. So the wattage that it needs for that, plus the wattage for the CPU, doing constant video playback, high resolution constant video playback, it's still got to 6.5 hours. So if you were to do some light gaming on this, you could look at 6.5 hours to be able, that sounds like a fantastic flight to Cape Town. Load up something on here, like a Need for Speed Heat or something to that effect. Jam it at 1080p for 6.5 hours. That sounds like a great plan. If you were to turn that sucker off, you're looking at like 10 hours plus of continuous video playback with the screen on 60% brightness and 50% volume, which I actually went up a little bit higher on that. This is one of the best built-in sound cards as well that I've ever used on a laptop. It drove my HD 598s so well. I was like, you don't even need an op amp or a DAC or anything. They were starting to make my ears bleed at 40%. It automatically picked up the ohmage of the headphone and it applied extra power. I know that because when I plugged in my 32 ohm in-ears, then it got to 60% volume before I started to get some ear bleed. So very clever, very advanced sound card on here, DIN audio. It's got a whole bunch of settings and different things you can do to it, but the usage experience of it has been absolutely fantastic. The real only complaint I have about using this was I played mostly with a controller when I was playing Forza 5. And then I did do some gaming like Doom Eternal. I like to have a run around in that, especially for the benchmarking processes of it as well, to get those FPSs and stuff. I have to obviously play the game. So I take a set stage, play through that stage, and then record and stop and record like that so that it's going to similar combats and stuff. It's very difficult without a set benchmark to keep the benchmark perfectly consistent. I'm sure you can imagine. But just playing through that, just for the experience of it, on this monitor, it just looks so damn sharp. I can't tell you, like, oh, it's so sharp. It's so sharp. I think it cut all the overripe tomatoes in my fridge already without just looking at them. It already cut those. That's how sharp this screen is. But the gameplay experience was at 110 FPS on 1440p. Oh, it felt so good. Everything was so fluid and smooth, and the ultra responsive screen and everything was kind of ruined by one factor. The heat for this notebook, because it's full mesh underneath, it would definitely benefit from being on a laptop cooler or something that's just raising it up and keeping those spaces open. It will definitely benefit from that. I tested it literally on this table, on this sort of mouse mat material. I test everything here so that it's got some consistency there. But the heat, unfortunately, stays underneath WASD quite a bit. I saw it on Notebook Check as well. They do extremely in-depth temperature testing and stuff. If you want to know more about laptops, like into details of ridiculousness, you got to check out Notebook Check. It's fantastic for that. And they basically had this exact same finding as me. WASD in this area over here gets quite hot. I'd say it's up until about the second last line of the keyboard like that. And that can be quite uncomfortable as you're gaming. As you can imagine, you've got really hot components underneath there, like 60 degrees C just underneath here. It's going to be like 40 on top. So it was very warm to the touch, and the controller experience was much better because I was detached from that. Then I could just sit and look at the machine. As soon as you put on your headphones as well with the auto fan, even at 50, even with it hitting 50 dB, not that it doesn't gaming. The one that the noisemaker is actually the CPU. So where that's chilling when you're gaming and stuff, it's actually pretty damn quiet. It's a very pleasant sort of hum in the background. You don't, like I say, you put it in headphones, you're not going to notice it at all. Overall, the package is 63,000 Rand. Okay, it's not like this is coming at a discount or anything like that. You are still paying for that mobility factor. But the fact that it's in this size, I mean, if I just take the chassis and just hold it up in front of you, I think this thing weighs maybe 2 kilos, if that, or 3 kilos. It's under 3 kilos. Look at the size of that. To put that in a backpack, and it's a full system with a, you know, screen, keyboard, mouse. It's always a consideration with the laptops. This is a full system, capable of doing absolutely anything my PC can do at 80-90%, except it weighs like as much as just my water cooling kit. So, yeah, if their goal was performance mobility, that goal has been knocked out of the park. The temperatures and stuff also never exceeded 92, 93 degrees, so they were thermal throttling and performing quite nicely there. I have seen some older Intels go over 100, which is quite concerning. Your transistor lifetime and stuff at 100 degrees is like 20% shorter than it is at 80, 90. So yeah, it's really good that it is doing that, and that it is adjusting wattage and performance on the fly, and that you can do it on the fly. If you want more frame rate, you press a button, you get more frame rate. That is so sick. I'm really am to that. So in conclusion, has MSI done what they set out to do? long story short, okay, bought my 1800X. It was like more than double of everything the 2600K was. I bought that setup, did the setup for that. I actually got gifted that processor from Auntie AMD, very kind of them. And similarly for my 2700X, very kind of them. And both of those were sick. They were really sick platforms. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be good for the next like 3 years. No, Intel and AMD, you're doing me in here all the time, okay? This 12th gen stuff is disgusting. I just got the 12600K. That just thumped, honestly thumped my 5900X at 130 watt, considering its price versus performance. It's like half the damn price and 80% of the performance. What? Okay, cool, that's a thing now. It's 12th gen is mind-blowing. The very top end is given it kind of like a bad rap in a way because of how much wattage and stuff the 12900K uses, going all the way to like 274 watt. But if you look at like their mid-range product and their mobility product, which is using like 105, 130 watt, it's disgusting. The price versus performance right now is heaps better than it was. The PCI Express is clearly running really damn well to get those speeds out of the NVMEs. The RAM is faster, so your multi-threading is better on that. Your burst mass on that for single core performance, maybe not as good as premium DDR4. I'm going to do a piece on that in the near future as well. We're going to actually do a deep dive into that because MSI has given me one of their C690 DDR4 boards to have a look at that. But sorry, conclusion of this laptop, 12th gen, all of that sort of stuff being considered, it's really cool. It's a really good time to buy. These are the performance gains. I mean, from 9, 10, 11 to 12, even just 11 to 12, if you look at the gaps that Intel's made on their own product, it's wild. It's such a cool time for like these things. And honestly, this thing is a pocket server. It's a pocket server, okay? This spec, like I said, 63,000 Rand though. Oh, no, but everything is dialed up to 11. So really it's now a case of how much you're willing to spend for how much mobile power you're going to get. And this is a really nice way to do it. It's a long time service chassis as well. It's been around for a couple of generations, which always gives me confidence in its product lifetime. The only thing that I would see MSI like change, like I said, is trying to get that heat a little bit further up. Most of the laptop manufacturers are getting it into the top band over here. Obviously, there's limitations and stuff. Like I said, this is a long-term service chassis, etc. But if you're going to be using it as like a desktop replacement idea, where you've got screen, keyboard, and mouse, and you're just docking this sucker on a laptop cool pad, what's the reason to have a 40K PC that you can't take anywhere when you can pop this in your backpack, take it with you on a plane, and you've got your server, etc. wherever you're going? Kind of sick. Anyway, that's enough of me. Hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you have, please hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side.
Touch, pause, engage.
Good afternoon and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech.